this is actually going to be kind of a fun project. I've never really taught this project, but I'm excited to see what you guys do with it. Essentially, you're going to break your stretcher frames. If you haven't made an actual stretch canvas yet, that's okay. I'm kind of let you break the rules before you learn them here, if you haven't yet. And essentially, I want you to make a canvas that's not the traditional rectangular shape. To do this, we're going to have a couple of available supplies. We'll have some wooden stretcher bars. You can use cardboard if you want, and then we'll have some styrofoam. And styrofoam you can basically cut into any shape. It's a nice solid but lightweight surface that you can stretch any kind of cloth over, but I think I'm going to get some cheaper stretcher cloth to go over it. And I'll kind of show you how to do that in the demo video here. But essentially, once you make that canvas, well, actually, before you make that canvas, hopefully you do what I'm asking down here in the middle. You need to make at least one sketch of your plan for your canvas so you don't waste supplies or make some weird idea and then decide it sucks and throw away this giant cut canvas. And then make sure you make a composition sketch as well, so that you have something that goes along with your shape. And then I really want your composition, your painting's composition, to fit with your canvas shape. So if you make a round canvas, hopefully your subject reacts to that round shape in some way, shape, or form. And I'm giving you complete freedom here in terms of subject matter, but again, you have to react to the shape of the canvas and the plan that you kind of make for your canvas. So, you know, we're going to take a look at some artists here, and there's just tons of things you can do with this, so many different things. And I want you to be thinking of kind of what you want to do as you look at some of these artists here. If you haven't done it yet, the traditional way of making canvas is pretty straightforward. You take stretcher bars, we have pre-made ones, and then you put them into basic rectangle shape, cut your canvas to the size, and then pull it tight if it's a regular duck canvas, and then staple that down. You know, of course, folding the canvas back at the corners. For, you know, non-traditional canvas shapes, you can make it out of wood and then stretch canvas over it, obviously, but we don't have any stretcher frames that kind of meet those specifications. So basically what you're going to have to do is make that yourself. And we do have some wood lying around. If you have a basic geometric shape that you know you want made, I can make the cuts for you, but then essentially you'll be stuck assembling it. And then the other option I'll show you in the demo is the styrofoam, which I think is kind of the best option, a little easier than these other options here. The first artist we're going to look at real quick is Elizabeth Murray. And the reason I'm looking at her is because she sort of redefined the basic abstract language that many artists worked in with this sort of like cartoony, bright, colorful language. And she's really famous for her really weirdly shaped canvases. I have a couple of photos here of just her process. You can really see that she sketches out everything and does, you know, several color sketches before she starts making something. And actually, before she even starts painting, she makes the canvas to the specifications of the sketch exactly. And she doesn't actually physically build hers. I'm sure at one point she probably did, but she's gotten famous to the point where she can have other craftsmen, professionally make her canvas for her. And so most of these canvases, you know, they're massive, as you can see in this right-hand photo here, but she mostly has those made, and then she'll paint on them. If you search Elizabeth Murray Art 21, that is a art series that PBS made that kind of documents contemporary artists in their studios, and it's a really, if you find clips from that episode, it's a really great video of her talking about her process and her painting. You get to see her paint and kind of hear her talk about why she does what she does, and kind of, it's a really cool thing to check out if you want to see more about her. Here's some more examples of her work. Very bright, very colorful. Just look at those shapes. They're fantastic. The next artist we're going to look at here, this guy, Lucio Fontana, I think is how it's pronounced. He's Italian. He's kind of kind of weird. He's the founder of an art movement of his own design called spatialism, and essentially wanted to synthesize music, sound, and vision all into one art. So in an attempt to embody that manifesto of his, I think it's called like the White Manifesto or something like that, he made these slash paintings. So he'd have this giant monochromatic painting, and he'd just make these giant cuts in it. So here's a couple examples of his slash paintings, and if you know, you're wondering like, well, why does he do that? I mean, what does that have to do with all this, you know, spatialism jibber jabber? And you know, it's kind of a stretch, but essentially, because he's making a hole in the canvas, you know, it creates a sense of space and mystery and sculptural quality to the canvas. And it doesn't really break the stretcher frames, but it does sort of like compromise what you traditionally think of as a, you know, solid painting. So it's something I want you to look at and think about. If you're wondering why the shadows are so black, typically, yeah, paintings are hung on white gallery walls, but what he would do is he'd take black nylon and he would stretch that across the back of his canvases so that the shadows would look pitch black in the back. He continued to work in this sort of like slashed style. He had a famous series of egg-shaped paintings that had these giant holes in them. And, you know, he did all sorts of stuff with kind of holes. And then he was, you know, he was kind of the start of installation art and light art, like he did a bunch of other kind of sculptural things, too. So he's worth looking into. Lee Bontecou, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but she is a fabulous sculptor. I mean, her work is just, I love it. I mean, it's really, really cool looking. Did a lot of like mobiles and just freestanding sculptures. And she's an excellent draftsman and drawer. This is a close-up of one of her wall pieces. Now, this I don't think could be called like a traditional painting, but you know, she does weld the wire structure, and then she takes canvas and stretches that across those wire forms, and then uses like copper wire, as you can see on the edges here, to kind of thread the canvas into the forms. And they're just these huge gaping holes in her canvases. You can kind of see here the three-dimensionality of them, and just like how singular they are in their scope. Like, it's all about that big vast nothingness at the center of it. And I just think that's really dark and really cool. And her forms are just really well made, really geometric. Again, some more examples of her work. If you want to try this, I mean, we don't have welding equipment, obviously, and I don't know how to teach you how to weld here, but you can make a wire armature if you want to try, or, you know, try to use wood or something to kind of get this three-dimensionality from your canvas. More examples. Now we're going to look at quite a few minimalist examples. Jean Arp, or Hans Arp, he's kind of one of the founders of Dada, the Dada movement, and Surrealism. But I think he's more famous as a sculptor, but he has some wall pieces that are very sculptural. So, you know, you can kind of think about him as a good example of how to layer work. So if you decide to use the styrofoam, you could probably do this, where you layer chunks of styrofoam. Stella, his early protractor works, another great example of shaped canvases, or canvases that are not traditionally sized. We'll take a look at some of his later works, or if you scroll through, you'll see some of his later works. He gets really, really expressive and just extremely creative with his forms. So really look through the whole PowerPoint to see some of his later stuff. It's some really cool stuff. And then, you know, you have artists like Ellsworth Kelly, again, another guy who sort of just relied on basic geometric shapes. Kind of a famous minimalist and founder of this whole idea and style. Robert Mangold is another contemporary practitioner of that sort of idea of the perfect form, or the perfect minimal shape, and his kind of combined line with shaped canvases. And these are just really quiet, really well-balanced works. So, from here on out, just take a look at all these artists. There's some really cool work. It's kind of arranged thematically, and then I will stop and talk about a handful of them that I think are worth noting. So yeah, just kind of browse through here. Again, here's Frank Stella's later works. You can tell they're just really something else. Like he got away from that sort of tight controlled mark making and just made these super expressive, like wild and crazy paintings. And these are just super cool. Go look these up and just take them all in, because he really gets fast and free with these. Don't really know much about Daniel Subkoff, but he's extremely contemporary. And, you know, I don't really advocate you doing sort of just, you know, canvas that's just destroyed, kind of like in these images here. But if you want to do something to this extent after you paint on it, I mean, I'm completely fine with that. And a lot of these works here are kind of installation works. There was a couple artists previous to him that were kind of installation artists as well. So you can think about that as you make your work, like how can it interact with the environment. That's completely valid. All right. Up until now, most of the work you've probably been looking at is pretty abstract. There's probably been a handful of like representational things. But the last thing I want you to consider amongst, you know, like breaking the actual form of the canvas is painting on unconventional things. Julian Schnabel here actually got really famous for these kinds of paintings, these broken plate paintings. And, you know, he just, I mean, it's one of those artists I admire, but I don't quite get. I mean, sure, you can paint on broken plates, but why and exactly what that's supposed to evoke, I don't know. And, you know, it doesn't really matter if I don't get it. He's super famous for it, and it's actually kind of interesting to look at. It's a weird textural quality to the work, and just probably brings up, if you really think about it, lots of associations. And, you know, he's painting on an unconventional, a very unconventional surface. So just take a look at these last couple of artists. They're kind of representational, and they have very unusual surfaces that they paint on, or they do more sculptural things to their work. So just kind of soak these in. At the very end of the demonstration, I hope to tack on a quick presentation on how to make like the styrofoam canvases. So stick around for that, or skip to that if you want to kind of know what to do. All right, we're going to show you how to make an unusual canvas shape. To do this, you're going to use some kind of unusual materials as well. First things first, you're going to actually cut the shape out of styrofoam. So I have this kind of cheap, thin styrofoam in my office here. It's not great, but it does the job, okay? And you can cut any shape out of this that you want. I don't care how absurd the shape is or how large it is. Just try to keep it under 4 feet in either direction, because these boards themselves don't go larger than 4 feet. And the cloth I have for stretching over it doesn't go larger than 4 feet. So you want to keep it a little bit within that range to make sure that you have enough for your supplies. To cut it, you can just use a regular box cutter. There's box cutters in number 6 over here on the counter. And when you cut it, it's not going to be very precise at all. It's actually going to look really weird at first. I'm going to make a really, really small example here. And I'm not going to make an unusual shape really. Just kind of an awkward kind of rectangle shape here. So to cut, just kind of push down. And you'll notice it doesn't really cut very precisely. That's because the styrofoam's kind of weird. Okay. And I'll pull that out there. So we got kind of a weird rectangle shape, okay? Obviously, I want you to be way more ambitious. Try to do something besides a rectangle or a square, but for my example here, I'm just gonna be real simple. And you notice also, it kind of makes a mess. So what you should do is try to brush all this styrofoam into the middle of your desk here, okay? Brush it off in the main sample, okay? And then you're gonna use a little broom here to clean it up right quick. And then when you're cutting with this, I have a cutting board here. If you don't have a cutting board at your table, get one of the boards that are by the sink and use one of those so that you protect the blade and protect the table from scratching. Okay, so kind of shake the rest of those off of there. And then brooms are on number 10 right back here. There's some brooms in a big old bucket up here, some drafting brooms. I'm going to use a drafting broom right here. And you just want to sort of gently kind of corral all these little styrofoam beads together and wipe them into a dustpan and then put them in the trash. These are going to get everywhere if you guys aren't careful and don't immediately clean up after you cut. So please, please try to be neat and tidy and just clean these up as soon as you make a mess. Save yourself a lot of trouble, a lot of frustrating kind of messes there. Okay, so once you've got your shape, you're probably not going to be happy with these really rough edges. Don't worry, you can sand them down, okay? I've got sandpaper. Preferably, you're going to want to sandpaper over a garbage can here. And it doesn't take a lot to get it kind of nice and smooth. So if I go to this edge here, I can get this really smooth, really quick. Okay. All right. And notice I'm kind of making a mess because I'm over the table here, but you can kind of see that it's getting nice and smooth here. We're cleaning that up real well. You can make it as smooth as you want. I don't really care. I'm going to kind of quick sort of clean up these edges here. It shouldn't take too long.
Now while I'm doing this, just real quick, you can make any kind of shape you want, like I said, and you can make multiple shapes if you want. So if you want to layer your shapes, you can actually make a bunch of these and put them on top of each other. You get kind of three-dimensional feel. You also don't have to make one. You don't like the shape you made, you can make 2 or 3. We got plenty of supplies, okay? This seems to work best, alright?
Okay, let's say I've spent hours shaving this down to what I perfectly wanted. I got kind of a weird shape here. It's kind of a semi-rectangle. And I got another mess again, so obviously next time I'll have to be a little bit more careful and make sure that I do this over the garbage or somewhere where I can kind of easily clean up. All right. And the only other reason you want to clean up too is because if you're going to gesso or anything, you don't want these getting in your gesso at all. Because these would kind of make it textured and you don't want that texture in there. Okay. So we got that all cleaned up. Easy peasy. Now we're ready to put some canvas on there. Okay? And this really isn't canvas. This is a really lightweight kind of cotton cloth called mucilin. And it's actually so light that you could probably filter water through it. It's really, really lightweight. And it's actually folded in on itself. So when it comes on the bolt like this, you kind of have to unfold it if you want the full distance here. My shape actually isn't that large, so I'm not going to have to pull this out and unfold it to get it to match the size here. I can just set it on this little chunk right here, and we probably got enough. So to make sure that I have the right shape though before I cut it out here, what I'm going to do is fold this back a little bit, and I'm actually going to draw the shape around the edge here. Give yourself a good inch and a half extra so that you can pull it around the edge and over the top. You want to be able to fold it over the top like that because you want to put the glue to attach it on the back. So I'm just going to kind of loosely draw where I need to cut all the way around here. Okay, and if you can't see it, I'm kind of trying to match the weird curves in the shape here. Okay, and then you can cut it easy with scissors. Cuts just like butter. All right, and there we go. Now comes kind of the frustrating part. We're going to use a hot glue gun to kind of glue it around and on the back. I hate hot glue guns, I really do. They're not my favorite tool to use. They're frustrating, but you know, they're the best tool for the job. So let's get this on here. I believe we had it like that, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run some glue down, and kind of fold it by hand over that. Now you want to be careful. Hot glue guns, again, are hot, so it will sting, it will burn if you get it on your fingers. This cloth is extremely thin, so if you push it down into the glue, be prepared for kind of a slight warm burn feeling. It's not really going to hurt you all that much, but it does sting, so be careful if you don't want to get burnt. So let's glue these down. Okay, I got my hot glue gun on and ready to go here. I got plenty of glue in back. There we go, plenty of glue. Okay, and then I can take this and I can just sort of gently fold. And you can push it down with your fingers. Again, it's going to be a little hot, a little warm. It might soak through the cloth, all right? It's actually burning a little bit there. And then I'm going to go opposite and pull tight in the opposite direction to get that nice and wrapped. Okay? So glue on this side. All right. Get that in there nice and good. And I can actually use more glue. I've got a lot of extra cloth here. So now at the corners here, I can kind of fold it back like this and then glue these down like that. Or I can just fold it like a package and just sort of get all of it in there at once. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to kind of fold it a little fancy, so I'm going to kind of fold it like this, and then I'm going to pull my corners tight as kind of a second step, okay? So take some glue, run it along the edge here. Okay, so once you've got all your edges glued down, I'm actually going to do kind of a tight corner here. So I'm going to pull this to the edge there, okay? And just try to glue all that fabric down kind of like that, nice and neat, okay? So I'm going to do this on all four sides. Okay, once I got enough glue there, pull that down, all right? And if I don't have enough, I can always go back, add a little bit more. The fabric is so thin, and the styrofoam kind of melts under the hot glue, so it's okay if you're liberal with the use here. You just need enough for it to stick and kind of stay stuck. Let's see if the other one kind of works here. Alright, so once you've kind of got your corners glued down, which it took me longer than I expected, so yeah, kind of the hard part. Once you got your corners glued down, you're ready to put some gesso on it. And I'm actually going to use primer. I'm not going to use gesso, but same difference really. And I didn't really pull tight enough, so you can kind of see some wrinkles in there. Make sure when you pull this back and glue it that you pull it pretty tight there. It's okay if it's not perfect. All right. If you're going to do the primer at your table, use a board or get some newsprint, okay, to set it on. And the primer is actually in this bucket here, or a bucket that'll look like it. It should say primer somewhere on it, okay? And then to open it, of course, you got to use a screwdriver here, okay? And then I'm just going to paint it with some primer here. Make sure you get the whole thing covered, and then get the sides as well, okay? When you're all done with that, it should look something like this, okay? So here's a finished one. This one's all primed and ready to go. It's kind of a smooth surface, all right? So it should be a little bit unusual, a little bit new for you. And it's really super lightweight, so you might have to ground it down with something. I don't know what, maybe clips or clamps or something. And yeah, you can just paint on it like normal. Try to, if you want to layer your shapes, try to make sure that you attach them first and then gesso the whole thing. And I would try to use a lot more glue than what you need. Just really cake it on there so that they're really well attached. If not, if hot glue gun's not working, I got some epoxy resin too. We can try that if it doesn't melt the styrofoam, okay? So that's how you make an unusual shaped canvas. One last quick reminder though, before I go, hot glue guns make a mess. Priming makes a mess. Make sure if you're going to prime or you're going to do any of this stuff, that when you're all done that you clean it all up. I'm not going to clean it up for you, so make sure you put the lid back on the primer, put the primer in 26, clean up the tip of the hot glue gun, unplug them, and then put them back where you got them, okay? I'll probably have a cabinet up here for it. Any large brushes or other tools go back in number 6. And then make sure you put the scissors away and give me the sandpaper back, because we can always use the sandpaper again. Do not leave the box cutters lying out. These are kind of dangerous and I don't want my other classes using these, so make sure you put them back in number 6 or give them back to me and I can put them away, okay? Don't leave any of this stuff sitting out, all right?